Hi,
Hello,
I'm Julian.
I'm Tom.
We are Team Binge. We are back for Silo Season 2, Episode 7. This one was called The Dive. If you watched the episode with a lot of down, down, deep swimming, that's the episode we're going to talk about today. Tom, we're 7 into 10 episodes, and I felt like we moved along in this one. I feel like we're getting a bit more. I felt like the last two, no pun intended, we were treading a little bit of water. But now we're no longer treading water. We're diving into the down, down, deep. Tom, did you enjoy this episode?
Yeah, I did. I like that we got obviously more of Solo and Juliet. I think for me, they're kind of the highlights of the series. So I like to be able to see more of what's going on that side, and that ends with a fun cliffhanger. I like that we finally get Bernard and Lucas really diving into the legacy and what's going on in the vault and rooms beyond the vault, which we'll get to. And to your point, like we're finally getting some movement with some of our main characters in this rebellion that's kind of happening. So I'm with you. I think it definitely picked up the pace a little bit. It's a little more fun and excited for the last three.
So, Tom, you really like Solo, who I would say is like a character where it's a grown man with a child's mind. And you've been friends with me for 30 years. Do you think there is a correlation between the people you find interesting and want to spend your time with, both Solo and, we'll say, myself?
I mean, it's correlation, not causation. So I
Okay.
think, yeah, I think you're probably right. My
Sure, you didn't
subconscious.
cause my childlike mind. Yes, I understand what you're getting at. It's just coincidence. You didn't
Yeah.
make me the way that I am. These nigh 30 years of friendship. Yeah, so I do want to check in since you read the books. We have kind of gotten this cheat code of Salvador Quinn's code thrown into this show. And correct me if I'm wrong, that is not a bookism, right? That's a showism?
Correct.
Okay. So,
And
knowing that and knowing that that's kind of become like the major plot point through this, like, have we diverted strongly from the books? On a scale of 1 to 10, how far are we from the books?
Lucas becoming the Shadow is in the books.
Okay.
So I kind of knew that Bernard was going to lean on him, and I didn't know how they were going to do it. When they send Lucas to the mines at the end of the first season, I'm like, oh, okay,
That
I guess
don't
they're going to
exist. Doesn't make any sense because there's no way to go down. Yep, the mines aren't a thing. It's just, I think we
Yeah.
can all acknowledge they're not real at this point.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
So that wasn't surprising, but I liked like his line that he gives to Sims later about lacking curiosity because Lucas clearly does. But a lot of this thing with the conniving and stuff that Bernard is doing is different from the books, and the Salvador Quinn code doesn't exist. Like he's not using Lucas to solve the code. He just sees that Lucas is a curious person and would make a good shadow for him moving forward. And like the Solo stuff is also a bit different, where Solo's motivations are not necessarily to just save himself and put Silo 18 in jeopardy, because Juliet doesn't really have a clock on her about, hey, I've got to get back to my silo right away. So they're kind of working a little bit more kind of together, and there's not this kind of back and forth screaming and yelling at each other.
Okay. And speaking of screaming and yelling at each other, so in the book, you're saying Bernard is not Tim Robbins, being like evil Tim Robbins and manipulative Tim Robbins, and then mean Tim Robbins and yelling Tim Robbins. I don't know how we haven't given Tim Robbins all the awards for this show. He is in acting class. It's been incredible.
Yeah.
Honestly, it could be comical. I enjoy everything that Tim Robbins is doing in this show.
No, I agree. He's still like a villainish character, but they definitely give him a lot more to do. And I think what might happen too is they might be condensing some of the books, because we did learn that they're going to do 4 seasons of this. And like we've talked about, this first and now the second season seems to be kind of book 1. I'm wondering if they're going to potentially skip some content from maybe the second book. For those who have read, you might understand why. But we'll see. Like I still think there's a lot of cool, fun avenues we can kind of go down.
Wonderful. All right. Well, let's dive into it. We've separated the silos as silos should be. It would make no sense if you wouldn't be calling it being siloed if they were combined. That just wouldn't work. So we start with Bernard and Lucas, and Lucas has been made the shadow, which is just a wonderful thing, and that allows him to go into this weird vault museum of trinkets and toys. I tried to really scan into the room to see what they had. It all just looked like weird knickknacks and paddywhacks and dogs with bones. I didn't really understand all the things that they were saving.
Yeah, it was like a bunch of art and books. So I think the idea of is like maybe the world went to crap and they're saving all like the stuff in museums, because I think there's like a portrait of like George Washington in the background. So there's all just this maybe American history that they're keeping. But again, I'd like just to call out like the super fancy tech they have, not only in this extra room outside the vault, which I guess I don't know if the room is called the Legacy or if the iPad we're going to see is called the Legacy. I don't know. But the super fancy tech where it says, hey, Lucas is now my shadow, and it like 3D scans his face and puts it on the screen. So I still find it so fascinating that they have this mass amount of technology but choose not to apply it for the rest of the silo.
Sure. Now, in this situation, Lucas has never seen an iPad before. He's never had like access to, I'm sure it's not the same thing, but we'll call it the World Wide Web. Tom, how quickly is he finding nudity on that pad, as one does? How quickly does Bernard have to come back in and be like, listen, buddy, we're going to put some limits on this. You're going to get 30 minutes of screen time. We're going to put some parental guidances on this because, honestly, I've seen your search history, and that's not how those are spelled, but you cannot just look those up right away. This is for, like, history purposes, Lucas. And Lucas is all sweaty and nervous. So I guess how quickly does the iPad get used for, let's say, terrible reasons as opposed to the reasons he's supposed to?
I love the way Bernard kind of says, like, oh, yeah, you just ask it to do anything. And he asks it to do, like, oh, find this code books. And it pulls up a bunch of books. But that was my immediate thought. Is like, oh, yeah, this guy's definitely going to get some, let's say, adult entertainment. I think I had that joke later in the outline. But I like it up front.
I'm sorry, Tom. As soon as that door closes, he's, yeah. But let's put a pin in that whole, like, hey, show me a bunch of books about code breaking. I mean, this guy's like Neo in the Matrix. They just like downloading information. All right. We do see the stars. I like how this is like a common theme with Lucas. They're like, hey, Lucas, those lights in the sky, remember, those are stars. Here's how they rotate, all this stuff. We find out, we get a number. We get a number that the silo was built 352 years ago, which the like Founders and Rebellion was 140 years, right? Those are kind of our timeline pieces that we know based on what the show's given us.
Yeah, that's like the Salvador Quinn, I think, when he was around, when he made this code, was, 140. But I like Bernard also mentions, like, we don't know why. Of all this information that we have in here, they did not say why they built the silo.
Sure. Classic them. They tell you what it is, but they don't tell you the why, you know? I did not appreciate this moment where Bernard's like, Lucas, you know why I made you my shadow, and you know why the code's important. And Lucas like looks into the camera and he's like, listen, audience, I know there's a rebellion going on, but I'm working on this because this is potentially more dangerous than the rebellion that's out there. And they both look at us as the audience. They're like, thumbs up, got it. Do you believe us now? Salvador Quinn's code. Yeah. And then it was just like, all right, thanks, show, for letting me know why it's important that Lucas is in here. And if you drink every time they say Salvador Quinn, you could get hammered pretty quickly.
Well, guess what? The name of the next episode, I think, is Salvador Quinn's Code or something like that.
Incredible. We're going to get hammered. I wonder if you're Hugh Howey, the author of this, and Salvador Quinn is not something you created, if you're watching the show going, wait, what? I didn't create Salvador Quinn. And then you're calling up Graham Yost and you're like, hey, Grammy baby, who's this Salvador Quinn fella? And Graham's like, listen, I did Band of Brothers. Calm down. You'll be fine. You're in good hands. I don't know.
I think Hugh Howey was like a consultant and is involved in the show quite a bit. So they didn't just take his source material and make it their own. So
they were like, hey, man, have you ever thought about Salvador Quinn's code? And he's like, what are you talking about? And they're like, yeah, we're going to put it in the show. And that was all. That was the consulting that he did. All right.
Graham Yost had just watched Da Vinci's Code. This is why.
That's true. He's like, man, have you read a Dan Brown book? Those things are incredible. Oh man, did you know Jesus had
I mean,
a kid?
your
All
books are
right.
okay, but man, this Dan Brown guy, he's
Down
much
there,
better
guy.
than you.
Listen, he's like, Graham Yost is like, here's what I envision. We give Tom Hanks a bad haircut. We let him run around the Vatican. All right? What do you think? I worked with his son on
Ka-ching!
Band of Brothers. Yeah, we could just print money. All right. We go from there. We spend some time with Knox. Knox meets up with his buddy that is the guy that creates weapons. And I don't know his name, and I don't know how to describe him other than he provides the gunpowder. This leads to a quick scene where Mechanical's collecting paper. I had a question about this, but then I realized, all right, these guys are big on recycling. Paper is like a hot commodity, so they've got to do a paper drive. All of this leads to a pretty sweet rocket explosion, which I enjoyed immensely as someone who has done those model rockets, both as a child and an adult. I love when things explode in the air.
Now, you tell me, as somebody who's recently done these model rockets, how easy is it to make a model rocket go perfectly straight up into the air and not go to the side?
Impossible. Impossible. Never been done, Tom. NASA can't do it. SpaceX can't do it. Other countries can't do it. North Korea can't do it. No. I know there's no wind in the silo, but
maybe that's it.
They should have fired two. The first one should have hit like a balcony, killed a couple of people, and then they go whoops, and then they like adjust something with a wrench, and then the second one goes straight up. That's exactly how it should have.
It's silly, but it's a great showism, and like seeing all these like leaflets drop. I mean, at first I'm like, oh, cool, it's a litter bot. They're just spreading all their litter above, and then I'm like, oh no, they're not litter. It's coupons. They're giving coupons for the Down Deep cafeteria.
Yep.
But no, they're leaflets telling about how bad IT is and judicial has gone rampant. I couldn't. This is a rarity for me. I did not. There was words on the screen. I did not pause it all, but I think I got the gist. Is they're just trying to ask questions about what's going on.
Yeah, my wife was like, wait, what did the leaflet say? And I paused to rewind, and we were like, "Oh, they'll tell us later." Nope, they never read it to us. I mean, we got a little snippet of it, but I also did not pause it. Something about IT, and we're being lied to.
Yeah.
Rabble, 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 rabble,
Exactly.
rabble. I did like how Arminson all this stuff is floating around him. Bernard comes out, and he's like, "What's happening?" And Arminson's like, I don't know, man. Just a bunch of paper in the air. Everyone's reading them but Arminson, the guy that should probably read it and know it's like the lies that are being spread. But
I've got thoughts about Arminson's detective work a little bit later on. So
Yeah, no, he's not my choice for who should be running judicial. That's for sure.
agreed.
But they turn the power off, which I guess we've seen this trick before, but they're turning it off and on to show that IT keeps power on, even though, so this is, hey, IT has a different power source. Something's going on in IT, which is this news to people? I feel like we did.
No, it is. I think so. I think we've heard it from Silo 17, where Solo was kind of talking about them having their own power supply. So we, as an audience, kind of knew it. But I don't think I even clocked it, the idea of that all the lights going out, IT lights still being on. And I think we get a little bit of additional help from Camille later on when she's talking to Sims and saying that, hey, the lights were still on in IT, so people were kind of asking more questions.
Got it. The show did remind us that Bernard had run in and turned off the power before in order to. So thank you, show, for reminding us dummies what's going on. Tom, I've always liked Billings. I am starting to like Hank / Hosier even more now. There's some things that he's been doing in the show that I like this actor. I like this character. At first, I thought he was just going to be kind of the dumb, sidekick to Billings, but I do actually appreciate him more and more. And these guys are doing the investigation on, at first it was Coop's murder. We've quickly forgot about Coop. No one cares about Coop. Funny thing, we didn't care about Coop in the beginning. I'm on record. Now they care about the food and why it's being poisoned. But I appreciate Hank. And I mean, once again, I've always liked Billings.
Yeah, I mean, these guys need like their own buddy cop show at this point. Because I like the idea of Billings going down, he obviously being a very competent and smart sheriff, but not really knowing the politics and what goes down in the Down Deep. So Hank being there to kind of facilitate some of the conversations and relationships that he's gathered is a lot of fun.
Sure, and this Brings in our favorite characters, Knox and Shirley, who are constantly sitting next to each other, telling us
Star-crossed
things.
lovers.
Yes, down deep lovers. They like to go down deep, those two.
Oh, goodness.
So we're trying to find out who poisoned the food. They remind us that Carla's still in prison, and she's alive. Doesn't seem to be doing well. Bernard comes in to question her. I wrote question because I can't say interrogate. And so Bernard's like, hey, Carla, I hope you're enjoying your stay here in La Casa de Silo. What's the deal with gunpowder? And she's like, I'll tell you when you tell me what happened to my friends. And Bernard's like, nah, I don't want to do that. And then he leaves the room. And I was like, power move, Bernard. I've never liked Bernard more than in this moment where he's like, nope, not going to tell you. And he leaves. I love it.
Because didn't he kind of negotiated with Walker, right? Or like he said something or did something that would allow them to know their friends are still okay, but he's just not having it this time. No negotiation. He's using his leverage. And he even says later on, it's like, well, whatever she says, I can't trust it anyways. So I don't know why he's even questioning her in the first place.
He's playing 3D chess, that Bernard.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't have time for this conversation. I got a rabbit to buy. And then he leaves.
Get me Will Trent, ABC Tuesday.
I don't even know where he is.
Will Trent is back.
You thought you could hide forever? Time to come home.
The series that's being called one of the best network procedurals.
We're going to solve this case.
Featuring new cast member Gina Rodriguez.
I'm a prosecutor. We deal in truth and facts.
Maybe everybody should try that, huh?
Will Trent, the 2-part season premiere, begins Tuesday on ABC and stream on Hulu.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply. USAA.
All right. We have... So the Sims and Camille of it all, Tom. I've always been a little bit confused on the motivation here. We get a little bit more in this episode, and if it just comes down to two married people not communicating, I think this is maybe like a universal lesson that the show is telling us. It's like, hey, even though you spend every day with this person, guess what? Like, maybe communicate a little bit more. I refuse to take that advice, but I appreciate the show trying to teach me something. They have their kid. Their kid, obviously, he's worried because the power's going in and out, and he's been given a Pez dispenser. And I believe, if I've clocked this right, we know this Pez dispenser, right?
Yeah, this is Pez dispenser that Juliet got from George. Is that his name? And he's told by Sims to keep it safe. I don't really get it. Or is this just him giving his kid a toy? I don't really understand, outside of the callback of bringing this toy back into play, what's the purpose?
I think he says keep it secret, keep it safe. And then he tells him that there were 9 Pez dispensers made, but in secret, 1 Pez dispenser to rule them all. And this one is that one. So yes.
Yeah.
I think
cast it in the fire, see if it glows.
Cast it in the fire. He's got to go down to the down deep to throw it in the mines, which don't exist. So, anyways, they are trying to reassure this kid. Once again, I don't understand the power structure here, because Camille is giving Sims advice on how to deal with Bernard. And it's no, make him come to you. If you come to him, I just didn't understand the power play of it all. I literally wrote, I don't understand the power play. And then I think Camille then said power play in the show. And I was like, all right, well, we're both confused, me and Camille.
Well, we know they're both big hockey fans, right? Camille's got all that hockey gear, so I guess that does check and make sense.
Sure.
I feel silly that this Sims went out of his way to make this delicious-looking circle for his kid, and nobody even eats it. I don't know what it is. It didn't look like a pancake. It just looked like a circle, like a cracker.
I immediately assumed it was a pancake. Yeah.
Nobody
they
eats
do
it.
set it in front of it and then take it away from him. It was...
Yeah.
It's like
Sims doesn't eat it.
It's like that thing in shows whenever, I'm sure we've talked about this before, but if you pay attention to this, anytime someone orders a drink somewhere, that drink will arrive and those people will leave before they drink it. Like, it's always a setup to, like, meet, talk, and then leave. And you're like, that drink probably costs $9 in this economy? Come on.
Yeah.
All right. Bernard gathers the sheriff department, all the deputies. He's like, listen, I know you guys heard on the radio Billings said some things, but he didn't mean them. Me and Billings, super close, best friends. No one's closer with Billings than me. Billings is the best. A lot of people are saying he's the best sheriff, and I'm the best head of IT. And Billings is a hostage. Oh, by the way, no radios. Yeah, good luck doing your jobs.
It was great.
Yeah.
I like how he even says, like, hey, we got to get him back to the up-toppers where he belongs.
Yeah. And these deputies are like, wait, so no radios? We can't, like, do funny jokes on the radio? Like, over, farva, that kind of stuff. And then, so we get the admin, and forgive me, I don't remember the character's name, but the administrative person that worked with the deputies, she's like, hey, what is this message about? IT lied to us. Please explain. And I don't know. I feel like that character's just brought in for moments like this. Like, I kind of forget who she is, and then I'm like, wait, no, she worked with the original sheriff and Juliet when she was sheriff.
Yeah, I feel like the idea is like they're just trying to, just like Billings went down and kind of now potentially joined the rebellion, they want to have some people within the current administration, if you will, to be kind of questioning him, right? So depending on how these things go, these could be the people that rally the troops on the other side.
I will just say that Tim Robbins gives the best, I can't believe you're questioning my authority face when he's in those glasses and he looks down at people. But he explains that they're under attack, and he's like, but don't worry about the attack. Judicial's going to take care of that rebellion. You guys just, worry about all that food being poisoned. And they're like, the food's being poisoned? And he's like, shh, never mind. You'll find out later. We're all good. No, don't worry about it. We then skip to Hank and Billings. They're questioning a guy named Martin who's a listener. And the only thing I appreciated about this was Billings being like, very ominously being like, wait, now when are we going to hear something we care about? He's doing like a great, like, bad cop to Hank's, I guess, better cop. I don't know. This was fun for me to see Billings be a little bit mean.
Agreed. And I like the kind of callback to listener, because I don't think they've talked about it in season 2 outside of there being guys in like plain clothes that are working for Bernard. But like this concept of listener, I think, came from season 1, where there are people around the silo that are in it for other reasons, like they're providing details to IT or judicial. And I feel like even, and I know you probably haven't watched them, but I feel like in the previously ons before these episodes, they don't do a whole lot of like cutting to season 1. I think this would have been a good example of showing us the concept of a listener and them kind of spying on people, but they just kind of throw that into here without a callback to it.
Yeah, the only reference they made it in this season, if I'm remembering right, is the gentleman that's in IT whose aunt would send him messages because they had listeners on certain levels when the cameras went out. But yeah, to your point, this was a callback, and we find out that notes get delivered in the scavenger room. So apparently there's plenty of paper in the toppy tip, and that a message came through, and that message is, we have to kill Knox and Shirley. Which, yeah, big gasp from the audience, which breaks into Knox and Shirley talking, and they're like, why'd you kiss me? No, you kissed me. And I couldn't have hit the fast forward button quicker because their love story, Tom, is not the greatest love story ever told.
Yeah, I disagree. I'm with you. I don't care about this relationship. I like the two characters separately as what they do, but they didn't need to bring them together romantically, in my humble opinion. Yeah,
not everyone needs to fall in love. In fact, less love in shows. Less love, more hate, That's
always
all.
Been a proponent.
Yeah.
You know me.
Always been a big fan. More war, less love. Give war a chance. We've always said on this podcast,
That's all we're saying.
That's all we're saying. That's what the bumper sticker I got for Christmas says. Given to me by my Gam. She's been passed down for me. She's a big pro-Vietnam Gam. All right. She's on the right side of history there. All right. Bernard needs a warrant, and guess who he needs that warrant from, Tom? He needs it from Judge Sims. Ooh.
My name is Judge.
My name is Judge. Tom, this is what we like to call conflict, because Bernard needs something, and Judge Sims, who he demoted, but then promoted, and then kind of pushed into a corner, has to give him that rubber stamp. So this leads to Common and Tim Robbins acting their actingest by yelling at each other in an office. And I'm all for it. It's great. This is the reference to I didn't want you to be my shadow because you lack curiosity. And I was like, ooh, sick burn. I'm going to start using that when I'm yelling at my kids.
I mean, to Sim's credit, though, I mean, curiosity did kill the cat, so he's not too curious. He's curious enough.
Yeah, that cat, that curiosity caused it to chew on the Christmas tree lights and use all of its 9 lives under that very expensive recliner that's now in Cousin Eddie's recreational vehicle, we'll say. Yeah, I'm
Good
with you.
Christmas vacation reference. But I don't understand, like, from Bernard's perspective, Sims wanted you to be your shadow. Like, did you really expect him to just rubber stamp all this stuff and just go quietly into the night and be a figurehead? Like, I wouldn't think so.
Well, I don't know. Have you met Commons, Judge Sims? He seems like a pushover. He only ran like judicial, the black ops community of the silo. Probably murdered several people while doing it. Yeah, he seems like a guy that's going to rubber stamp things after you've, sent him. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm with you. It doesn't make any sense, but it does lead to these guys yelling back and forth. And Sims is like, hey, man, you're running out of allies and moves. And I was like, oh, good line. And I wrote it down. I was like, I can't wait to shout that at my Gam next time we're playing war board games,
I do I think Common throws away a piece of paper, crumbles it up, and throws it in the trash. So again, this still reiterates my point how much he hates paper.
Can't stand it. Man, he's like, I will join season 2 of Silo if, at a minimum, I get to throw paper twice in every episode. And Graham Yost is like, Common, anything you want, man. You can throw some paper right now.
I'm really hoping we get a third by the end of the season.
Fingers crossed. So Bernard then dimes out Camille. He's like, hey, I bet you and your wife are so close, I bet you knew that she helped out those 2 mechanicals. And it was like, once again, I'm just confused by, are we just trying to learn that married people don't communicate very well? What is going on here? Does Camille doesn't have any type of alliance to Bernard that we don't know about, right?
Yes. And this is, again, why, from a showism standpoint, oh, cool, Bernard learned something that Camille doesn't know, and then immediately tells Camille about it from the previous episode, and now he's immediately telling Sims in this episode. It's kind of it'd be more entertaining if they let this stuff kind of stew a little bit and use it in a more interesting manner than just telling the character the secret that you found out.
Sure. All right, we go from there to Knox and Shirley hanging out. They're being held by Billings and Hank, and I understand why they're doing this. It just gives all of them a chance to interact and be in the same cell together. And this
Knox and Shirley continue to be weird. I think they've got a weird back and forth that I'm is supposed to be cutesy and flirty. It's just not working for me.
Oh yeah, she tries to punch him and he blocks it, and I was
he grabs it.
I don't know if we're starting this relationship off with domestic violence is where the greatest love stories go, but those crazy kids. Walker comes in. She walks in, if I may use the term. And she's like, I want to know about Carla. I want to know. I didn't do enough 25 years ago, and that's how I lost her. And we need to do something. And they keep bringing up seclusion, or once judicial puts someone in essentially solitary confinement for questioning, we never see them again. And she's like, surely, she's like, use the radio. And the show's like, hey, remember the radios are off. And she's like, use the messengers. And they're like, remember the blockade. And she's like, well, I'll figure out a way to do it on my own. And I was like, all right, cool. Thanks, scene. And then she walks out of the room.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think the more poignant part is her mentioning the idea of like, I didn't do enough last time 25 years ago. I have to try and do anything I can to help my friend or former lover. I think even later they say that they were married. So I guess they got
divorced 25 years ago.
Yeah.
The show, like, we know they've got history. Show, you don't have to keep hitting us in the face with it like Knox and Shirley are doing to each other. You know, show we're not in love with you. You don't have to punch us in the face with facts. Come on.
Yeah.
Speaking of people that are getting punched in the face with facts, we've got Lucas, who's been alone with an iPad doing Lord knows what. He's downloading. They're like, looking at the covers of books doesn't give you the knowledge inside of the books. I don't know a lot about books and reading, Tom. I'm on record. But I'm pretty sure in order to gain the knowledge from what's inside a book, you have to read almost every page. And I just, the show was like giving us like a beautiful mind montage of him being like, oh, maybe it's numbers. And he's like, show me numerical coding. And it's like all these books. And he's like, I got it. And you're like, wait, what? Is that how iPads work in future silos? I don't know. I found this dumb.
It was kind of silly. I mean, it's just the showism, I think, just to move it along because we don't want to spend a whole lot of time with Lucas trying to crack
Tom,
the Gibson.
I wanted 20 straight minutes of Lucas sitting in a chair and us just watching him read. That's exactly... You know what? I'm being dumb in this moment. You're right. There's no way to make this like seem interesting. He's got to have that aha moment. So
I mean, I guess now that like AI being more prevalent and the fact that we can just kind of ask something and it pull out the pertinent parts of maybe a story, a book, or something that we want, maybe we'll give it the benefit of the doubt. Like he's asking for codes, and then he can ask a follow-up question about like, tell me how this could be used in this specific string of the Quinn letter that he has. Like, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the iPad could have talked back to him. The iPad could have been like, it looks like you're trying to ask about Salvador Quint. And he's like, no, Salvador Quinn. And they're like, Salvador Quip. And they're like, no, stupid. And then he shatters the iPad and Bernard walks in. He's like, what did you do?
We only had one.
You idiot.
Well, but like the whole idea of like how incredibly like high tech this area is, I imagine you can just feed the computer, hey, solve the code that's in this cryptic message, and like in maybe 3 seconds, the computer can solve it.
I agree. I'm sure the iPad also has a camera. You could just take a picture or pull up the Salvador. Did you mean Salvador Quinty? And it's like, no, there's no Y at the end. Anyways. We have a riot happening in the cafeteria, but remember, the rebellion's not as important because whatever's happening in Salvador Quinn's code is more dangerous, Tom. So remember that. We've got a riot in the cafeteria because word of the poisoning has gotten out. So rabble. I believe the cook with the knife is Maeve, however you say it, Maeve. We find out that originally she's not the poisoner, but then she admits to being the poisoner, and they have her mom. And I didn't really like this. Knox is like, listen, we're not going to kill you, but we're going to make your life pretty rough. We're going to be like mean to you and bully you. He obviously didn't watch the anti-bullying campaign as a kid. And no one's like, well, they do have her mom, so she was just doing things because, and she did alert us, so no one got poisoned. I don't know. I felt like we could have gone softer on Maeve than we did.
Yeah, I guess the idea is just trying to separate what the uptoppers would do to people that lied or betrayed them or whatever versus what the downdeepers were or would do. So Knox is like, hey, we'll give you a hard time because we're greasy, grimy downdeepers, but you know what? We still love you.
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good Knox impression. That's actually... Is he in the room with us right now?
I was shirtless when I said it.
Oh, incredible. Your arms look great. I do want to point out, once again, we see Hank being a competent detective in this moment. He's like, wait. He's like, how's your mom doing? And I was like, oh, he's Columboing her right now, which was fun. So I'm just enjoying Hank, and no one got stabbed. So my Gam was disappointed, but big plus for everyone in the room, you know?
Yeah, I think at the end, and Hank's like, say hi to your mom for me, okay?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Mark Wahlberg? All right, so Bernard and Lucas are hanging out, and Lucas is like, listen, I found out it's a book cipher. It has to do with a page 77, and
It's an old book.
it's an old book. Oh, man, how are we ever going to find this book? Oh, it turns out it's in the drawer next to me right now.
So good. I was really hoping we'd go on some sort of mystery hunt or whatever. But, I mean, this came up previously, right? When it was... I mean, I don't know why it came up in Judge Meadows and Bernard's previous conversations. But, yeah, this is the second finding of this Wizard of Oz book, which, again, wicked marketing strikes again.
Man, yeah. I mean, the way they sang Wizard of Oz, I was like, that's really weird, Silo, that all of a sudden we turned this into a musical number. Mm-hmm, and but Lucas and Bernard both have beautiful voices. That's all I'll say.
They really do.
So we're going to get a dive into page 77 of Wizard of Oz. I can't wait. I hope that we just, read the whole page for 10 minutes of an episode. I'm all about characters reading on screen. I've turned the corner, Tom. That's all I want from the show. Speaking of people that are turning a corner, we have Sims and Camille talking about how poor they communicate. And Sims is upset because she helped out the rebels. There's an implication here that Camille is on the rebel side. Like, Sims keeps, implying, hey, you seem to have, I don't know, compassion for them. Oh, you helped them. Bernard knew it, but you never, told me. And Camille's point is hey, we don't know how this is going to go, so we're going to play both sides. We're going to play, Bernard in case he wins out. We're going to play the rebels in case they win out. And once again, I do not understand what their ultimate goal is other than survival for their kid. Is that all I'm supposed to be reading into this?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the idea of playing both sides, I think, is clever and smart from Camille's perspective, because I don't know if Sims has really thought about that. And I think Camille is kind of giving Sims plausible deniability by not telling him these things that she's doing. So that way, when Bernard does come hard at Sims, Sim can say, well, hey, it's my wife that kind of did it, kind of thing. So I think Camille's a very smart and tactical, makes a lot of tactical decisions here, which I think are smart. But again, to your point, what their end goal is and what they're trying to do outside of just maybe trying to survive this rebellion, I don't know what. But they end it by saying, yeah, no more secrets, and we're going to be besties now.
Yeah, they do their secret handshake, do one of those bro hugs, and then they're like, all right, all good. And then she's like, have you noticed every time our son picks up that Pez dispenser, he's invisible? And Sims is like, we don't speak of it. Call Gondor for aid. I didn't understand what Walker was doing, but the show very quickly didn't leave me in suspense. Walker sets up a camera, and this is her way of getting Bernard's attention, essentially. And this is also where Bernard, as he's talking to Arminson, and I know that's not that guy's name, but I'm going to continue to call him Arminson until the day that I die. That Carla and Walker were divorced 25 years ago. And then they have the scene where they hold hands in the cell.
Well, and the way they position it, it's they're holding hands, so we know they're former lovers or former whatever. But then he's like, maybe, they were divorced 25 years ago. Yeah, maybe these are subjects of interest or people of interest. You would do some modicum of research on them.
Sure.
So to see the holding hands thing be the catalyst for how they know they were divorced, I thought was kind of silly.
Sure, yeah. I mean, yeah, bad job, Bernard. Also, holding hands being a very deep gesture. I don't know. I mean, it's Christmas time. I'm holding hands with a lot of people. I mean, that's a lot of people to investigate.
Getting a lot of people sick.
Yeah. Well, I touch them on the face after I shake their hands. I do the face swipe from Face Off, the movie, face waterfall, as Paul Scheer called it. All right, let's dive into Silo 17, Tom.
Please.
Okay. As two scuba diving experts, Tom and I are going to have a lot of things to say about this. So, where we left off is Solo has the suit that Juliet needs to go back to her silo, and he is essentially holding it hostage so that she does this underwater dive to turn on the pump to bring the water down because the water is slowly creeping up and will eventually fill Solo's silo.
Yep.
And so we learned that this is an 8-level dive. So I did the math. If we do 10 feet a level, as most buildings are, so she's got to go 80 feet. And in scuba diving, Tom, 20 feet is like a level of atmospheric pressure. And I know I'm wrong on a lot of this, but like that's where you have to worry. And so it's very funny that as I was watching this, I was like, oh, I wonder if they're going to, and then Solo, to not disappoint, was like, oh, by the way, there's a thing called the bends. You can't come up too quickly.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was great. And it's like, okay, something's going to happen where she's going to have to go up slow, which is exactly what the episode does, Tom. She has to come up for air very slowly, right?
No, I was just so bummed about this being zero payoff. Like, I thought there would be more drama at the end where she'd have to. I'll say in the books, there's a lot more drama to this sequence, and it's like a super long chapter of her like battling and trying to get extra air between like steps of stairs. Like, it's brutal, and it's so well written. So for him to kind of bring up this concept of the bends, and I know you mentioned the 20 feet thing, like, doesn't that matter about like the water pressure of the ocean and the volume of water? Like, is there less water in the silo, so then it doesn't cause as much pressure on your body, so she could go deeper? I don't know.
That's a good point, and something I'm wholly unqualified to answer, Tom.
Okay.
It's a really good question. For those of you that are master scuba divers, you can reach us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. If it's lengthy and too scientific-y, Tom will read it. I will not. I don't know what to do with numbers and stuff. So, but yeah, I did think it was, well, my only thought would be is maybe in the next episode she's going to show signs of having come up for air too quickly. But they certainly don't do it in this one. And I don't know how quick that effect like hits you. Much like that zombie bite on her arm, it took a little while for her to like collapse. So
Yeah.
But this, I did enjoy this. I wish they didn't cut in between this and what was happening in the other silo. I would have taken this as like one sequence, because you kind of, it's also so dark. You get a little bit lost in where she's going and how far down she is. But I thought this was cool in terms of she's on the lift. Once again, there's no test run. We just fill our shoes with rocks and jump into the water.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, did you have trouble swimming? Oh, by the way, there's a thing called swimming. Hey, did you have trouble swimming last time? I filled your boots with rocks, like just like you asked. I felt like it was a good time. It was a real good time. And,
She gets the goggles too, which I appreciated from Solo, and she was like a steampunk scuba diver. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. I appreciated the conversation where Juliet's was like, well, if you need this to happen, why don't you go? I'm scared. Are you scared? Yeah, I'm scared too. And then we have Solo lose his ever-loving mind because he does not want to go. Very childlike, kind of like tantrum.
Right.
Which, once again, the layers to that character I find fascinating. And to your point, like Juliet and Solo are where I am more interested in this story. And I don't know if that's just because Juliet has been the main character, but I wanted to spend more time in Silo 17 than I did in 18.
Yeah, because he essentially admits he's not capable, but he still wants to believe that he's like the leader of IT and he can't leave, and he's not. I just loved his reaction to this, because it is very much to his kind of childlike nature. And I know we only have 3 episodes left in this season, but I think it would be fantastic if we do get some sort of kind of flashback episode. It doesn't have to be maybe the whole episode, but get more of how Solo became Solo, because I think it just really does round out his character so much more.
Sure, and I get the sense that the way he is being presented is he has done some things that he did not want to do for the sake of this silo, and like believing that he is the lead of IT, and has maybe made some really tough choices. And so that is why the weight of him needing to save this, because if this all goes underwater and it all fails, then everything he's done up to this point doesn't matter. And so that's kind of where I feel the weight of his need to like make this work and make his silo survive comes from, even though it'll end with him anyways. But there's definitely there's some stuff I want to know about that character, and I'm very interested in him. The other thing I want to point out, speaking of people not communicating and being married and being in a couple, is Juliet is doing some great silent anger here. And I like that Solo gets to the point where he's like, how long are you going to be angry with me? There's something about someone doing something they don't want to do and doing it with a silent anger that I really appreciate. I can't relate.
You've been perfecting this for years.
Well, I didn't want to bring it up, Tom, but I am a tremendous silent anger person, and it's done me a lot of good in life. If you internalize anger and you just like let it build and like slowly turn your insides into rot, my therapist was trying to tell me, I fired him silently and angrily, but
ghosted your therapist.
Yeah, ghosted my therapist. Anyways, Tom, how quickly would you hop on that lift and do this scuba dive? I mean, as a guy that just loves you're like the James Cameron of underwater exploration. You can't hop in a submarine fast enough. How much did you enjoy this little adventure?
Oh, all I just kept saying this entire time she's going down, and she seemed to go down like 38 floors. I just kept saying, nope,
not gonna do it. I mean, there is something to say about how clear the water is. You know, you can see. But also, I guarantee there's bodies floating in that water, and that's the one thing I don't like about this is you like turn a corner, and then there's a guy just like hanging, being like boo. And there's a lot of seaweed down there. Seaweed's gross. Kelp when it brushes against your ankle, yucky. No, thank you. But Juliet's much braver than both of us combined. She goes all the way down. Oh, the thing I was saying nope about is plugging a power cord into something while underwater didn't seem like a great idea to me. I know that some things are like waterproof, but the Silo's steampunk nature makes me feel like OSHA didn't get involved and insulate all of these cords. She's just like plugging in cables. Also, it's an electric motor that's been sitting underwater for months. I don't know.
Preserved it.
What's that?
It preserved it. I don't know.
Yeah, it gave it more power. Yeah, it helped it charge. But if she had flipped that power switch and just, electricity had gone through all the water and this storyline had ended, I would have been surprised, but not surprised at the same time. Instead, we lose the lift. It just like falls, like the rope's been cut, and then the air turns off. And we have a long climb up the rope, and then she discovers swimming halfway through. Is that right? She was like, oh, he told me to... I think pulling on the rope's actually faster than swimming. Tom, is pulling on the rope faster than swimming?
I thought the same thing, and like when she jumped out of, instead of using the rope, she just kind of swims to the side. I'm like, oh, she's going for air, or she sees something she's going to grab, but no, she's just using her arms that she recently learned about from Solo before she dove, how to swim. So it didn't seem helpful, but got us to the top.
Yes, it did. Yep, she made it out, and everything was A-okay. And
No
Solo
bends.
was like, did I do that? But Solo's gone, and I did not clock the hatchet the first time. There was like a wand, like the pressure washer wand, and I was like, and then blood, and I was like, oh, someone got beat with a pressure washer, and my spouse was like, oh, did you see the hatchet? I was like, there's no hatchet, and then we rewound like 4 times, and sure enough, there's a pretty strong viewing of a hatchet that's just on the ground, which definitely pick up that hatchet, Juliet, because something's going on. So Solo is not so Solo, or is this all a staged murder that Solo did, Tom? These are the questions we have to ask.
I don't know. These are the questions you have to ask. I already know the answer to it.
Wait, what? No. How? You've already...
What do you think's going on?
You've already detected us? I mean, I would assume they've given us some clues that someone else is in this silo.
Right.
And Solo's a little bit paranoid, although you could take the paranoia just being from a child that grew up to be a man who has been alone in the silo. So not going to be surprised if there's... But I'm also not going to be surprised if Solo cut the rope, somehow cut himself in the process, and then ran away because he's Solo. So
yeah. Well, so I feel like, to your point about getting clues, I think this episode ends with a camera angle from like a level above Juliet, kind of looking down on her and then kind of slowly panning away. And I think we got the same shot when Juliet first got to the silo and was trying to build that bridge, and that rope kind of cut as well. And we had talked about that. Like, it seemed like the rope was cut and not just like frayed and ripped apart. So I think this is definitely, the show is leaning us towards thinking there might be some other folks in this silo we don't know or haven't met yet.
Sure. There's a guy that just hates ropes, and every time he sees one with tension on it, he's got to go cut it.
It's like Sims with paper.
Don't go out. He's like, no, there's a rope. I can smell it. And they're like, where? And he's like, it's down deep. And he's got to go and cut it because he hates ropes. He was burned by a rope in gym class once, and ever since then, he just can't stand a tensioned rope. Anyway, a slack rope is fine. If it's coiled on the ground, he walks by it. But if
what does he
got
feel
tension,
about steel cables? Is he cutting steel cables?
Steel cables he's okay with. They didn't hurt him. It's ropes that hurt him. Steel cables, he knows that when you jump attached to a steel cable 80 stories, that cable's going to take care of you. It's going to give you the flexibility that doesn't snap your back and kill you, like physics said it should. But that's neither here nor there. Tom, I am excited to figure out what Salvador Quinn's code says. If this show continues to do what it does, then that code will really mean nothing and disappear in an episode. But it's giving us something to look forward to. I'm excited to find out if there's another person in Silo 17. If Solo was in Silo 17, then the person that's wandering around cutting ropes is like non-Solo. What's the opposite? That person's called like couple, or something like that.
Duo.
Yeah, there we go. We should have workshopped that together because yours was much better than my two. All right. For those of you that are still with us, thank you. You can reach us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. On Spotify, you can follow, you can comment. We appreciate those comments. It was good to hear from Nicolette. It was good to hear from Barrett. Glad to see that the tiling's going fine. And Tom, what did I miss?
Yeah, follow us on the socials, Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram. I don't know, there's probably some other ones, but at Team Binge Podcast. Follow us there and let us know what you think of the show. It's been interesting kind of going on social media because I think there is a lot of different like love-hate relationships with this season. I think a lot of people kind of shared our sentiment, especially with the middle of the season where it's kind of been slow and a little bit more boring. A lot of comments about how dark Silo 17 is, which I think is funny, comical, and fair. But I always watch the show at night, so it's never really that big of an issue. But I think the general sentiment, though, is people still are very much loving and enjoying the show. And certainly people are happy that we're going to get a conclusion in 2 more seasons. So
this is a great show to watch if you're recovering from a migraine because there's no light. And so you're just staring at a dark screen. And it's a little bit therapeutic. So highly recommend, have a migraine, watch Silo. You heard it first from Team Binge. We're not doctors. We've made that quite clear. All right. For Team Binge, I have been Julian.
And I have been Tom. Until next week, everybody.